leap.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the invite.
And so if you can share your screen, and thank you, Andy, in the meanwhile as well.
You're very
We will be
welcome.
back with the questions and discussion at the end. Yes, we can see your screens, Zuber, and the full slides as you're ready to go. Well, once you do your full slides. Yeah. Any questions, anybody? Please type them below. We will answer them. Thank you, Craig. There is a question for Andy, but I'll ask it a bit later on, Craig, if that's okay. Over to you, Zuber.
Okay, fantastic. So, well, thank you very much for the invites. And, you know, I've had two great speakers before me, and I'm not sure if I can measure up to their speaking style and their, you know, the great presentation that they gave. But what I've been invited to discuss is the joint venture partnership model within dentistry. Before I sort of dive into it, I'll sort of explain to you about a bit more about myself and who I am. Graduated in 2005, did my vocational training with the infamous Bandal brothers in Coventry. I set up my first squat practice in 2007. We run 20 plus contracts currently. I'm still in surgery, mainly focused on dental implants, sedation, restorative work. I still do NHS dentistry as well. I'm an implant mentor and lecturer, and as well as a business mentor as well. But what's important is the work-life balance, and this is the thing that I keep pushing to all my associates, all my partners, my friends, my colleagues, is that you have to have this work-life balance. And I think Drew quite eloquently explained that as well. And you can't just work. You have to have this work-life balance. Born and bred in Bolton, father of 3 rugrats. Happily married, very keen at triathletes. I completed the Ironman Challenge in 2018, and for those of you that don't know that, that's a 2.4-mile swim in the reservoir, following on with a 112-mile bike on the main routes, and then straight on after that is a full marathon. So anything's achievable. Like Andy said, anything is achievable so long as you want to do it and you're passionate about it. So the aims and objectives really is to help the audience understand the pros and cons of being an associate and a practice owner. And I'm just going to skip through those sections pretty swiftly because Andy's quite nicely sort of summarized all of that for you. Understand the concept of joint venture partnerships and the back-end support that's actually required and that is actually in place for joint venture partnerships. So the joint venture is effectively a business arrangement in which 2 or more parties pool their resources together to accomplish a specific task. This could be a project or a business project as well. And notable examples within the healthcare industry are such things like Specsavers, we've all heard of them, Vets for Pets, and it's also getting more and more prevalence within the pharmacy industry as well. So let's start with Vets for Pets. It's a Guernsey-based a business where there's an A shareholder, which would be the operating veterinary surgeon, who partners up with the Pets for Vets veterinary group, equal shares, £1 each for the shares, and then the OpCo, which is the creation of these 2 shareholders. They typically borrow some funding where the Pets for Vets group acts as a parent guarantee. Loans achieved, a squat practice is launched. The operating company pays a monthly running cost to Pets for Vets group based on the turnover, as well as their normal salary as well. So there's 2 income streams here. In the pharmacy industry, similar models are emerging more and more. Pfizer, Alliance Healthcare, etc. But the most notable one I think we all know about is the Specsavers model, where again, it's an A shareholder and a B shareholder, equal partnerships in most stores. And you know, this is the sort of the most notable example, started over 37 years ago by Doug and Mary Perkins from the spare room. Currently operates just short of 2,000 stores or across 10 countries. Very similar model where the partner, the operating partner, draws a fixed salary from the operating company, and then there's a centralized cost which is given to Specsavers to run the central services. Hakeem Group is a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. Again, incepted this about 15 years ago, born and bred in Bolton, who shared the same cobble streets together, and who, again, introduced the joint venture partnership model within optometry about 15 years ago or so. Now operates over 100 practices, over 6 countries. So why has this not been introduced into dentistry? That's the key question. There are some models. Drew mentioned Alan's model, Collaborates. There's some other models, Dentex model, etc. But it's never actually been a full joint venture partnership, 50-50 ownership model within dentistry. And the reason for that is because we're not a retail run model. We're not a model that just relies on footfall coming in, but there's so much more that goes behind the scenes. And again, Andy touched on that as well in terms of governance, IT, marketing, HR, training, etc. So unless someone's mastered all of this to be able to provide those services as a joint venture partner, you're really acting just as a silent shareholder, which really is not required in dentistry. Market composition, again, Andy touched on this a little while ago. Mostly owned by the bigger corporates, the My Dentist Group, etc. But there's still the majority of the marketplace is owned by independents and smaller groups as well. So the opportunity for new associates to buy into a practice or buy a practice or even set up squat practices is humongous. So there's still a lot of opportunity. The decision between associateship and ownership, again, Andy's quite nicely summarized that. Points such as the fact that you've got freedom from organizational duty. So you, as an associate, you go to work, you do your dentistry, you go home, you enjoy your life, etc. You come back home the next day, come back to work the next day, etc. You're mainly concentrating on your clinical dentistry. You've got flexibility to go on courses, depending on your employers, of course. You could have a flexible schedule. Again, depends on your employers, of course. It's you put the work in and you get paid for it. It's as simple as that. You don't need to rely on your profits. You put your clinical hours in, you get paid for it. It's just a nice linear relationship. Cons, it's you're not really in charge of your career. You're not really in charge of your destiny, and there's obviously less and less flexibility, with 9 to 5 working arrangements, etc. Again, our big cons is the fact that you earn, you get paid. You don't work, you don't get paid. And again, Andy's quite nicely summarized all of this very well. The biggest one is lack of control. It's this which is probably the biggest driver, in my opinion, which is why associates take a next step into practice ownership. There's many benefits of being a practice owner, but the grass isn't always green on the other side. And again, the analogy of the tooth and the iceberg puts it quite nicely. There's a lot of things that we do behind the scenes as practice owners. It's not just 9 till 5. You got to put in a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of people don't see that. And certainly when you enter into associateship, from associateship to practice ownership, that you'll get to realize that I'm not seeing my friends anymore. I'm not seeing my my children as often as I'd like to. So the grass isn't green on the other side always. So just be mindful of that. And what Drew said in terms of the mindset change is absolutely key. And the mentorship that goes behind that mindset is also absolutely key. So yes, there are obviously cons of being a practice owner. There's financial pressures. There's a whole host of different cons, but you'll find out if you ever enter ownership. What if there was a sort of a middle ground, which is where you can enjoy as an associate, being an associate, enjoy your clinical dentistry, enjoy your freedom to access courses, enjoy your flexibility in your working life, stay in control, as well as all the nuances of practice ownership is managed with a tried and tested formula. And that's what the joint venture partnerships, the JVP model, is all about. There's a number of things that a JVP model can benefit an associate or someone who's even a practice owner, in fact, who wants to relinquish some of that responsibility whilst maintaining control and shares of the business. So everything from recruitment to HR, training, accounts, governance, facilities, management, the marketing. Again, Shaz will explain that in a lot more detail when he does a specific marketing relating presentation at the end. All of this managed whilst you are working as a principal within the practice, enjoying your clinical dentistry. And I think this JVP model, the joint venture partnership model, fits into that. Financial flexibility in terms of you can invest 25% or you can invest 50%, and there's that flexibility within the joint venture partnership model. So as an associate, you can either invest into a squat dental practice. You're looking at about, I'd say about £180,000 for a squat practice renovation for a 2-surgery practice on a leasehold basis. You may only have £50,000, so we can make arrangements as a specific share according to the investments that you make. Or it could be that it's a £500,000 practice that you're buying, and you've got your flexibility to invest in 25% of that to start off with and build it up over the years to acquire the 50% share. So there's flexibility within the joint venture partnership models. Okay. You might have the drive, you might have the passion to want to set up a new squat practice, but you might not know where to start. You might not know the locations. As Andy said, location. And it's key because without finding the correct location, without doing a mapping exercise on those locations, a SWOT analysis on those locations, then you don't really know whether the practice is going to be successful or not. So a needs analysis needs to be attended to. This is where a joint venture partnership or a joint venture partner will have the expertise to do. And again, the running cost of the practice will be shared. So there's shared risk as well as a shared reward. All the operational supports will be given under the joint venture framework, and in any healthcare industry, this operational support within the joint venture partnership is governed by. It's delivered centrally, but on a local level as well. Specsavers do the same, Vets for Pets do the same, etc. Big problem is recruitment. So as a practice owner, if you are an individual practice owner, you may find it difficult to attract, especially if you're a new practice owner. Not saying everyone's the same, but it's a challenge, especially because in our industry, it's unlike pharmacy, optometry, or veterinary science. Our industry is quite unique when it comes to recruitment challenges. Our joint venture partner can certainly support with that as well. HR, again, a very undervalued part of business operations, and are massively undervalued. The actual the fragrance of any business is within HR. So how you do your objective appraisals, how you make a team feel empowered, how you motivate your staff, and all of this comes with leadership, putting the right staff members on the front line, ensuring that everyone's valued. And once you've got this, the fragrance of the organization, Google does it really well, Apple does it really well, and Virgin does it really well. So these are companies that you need to aspire and look at. And why is it that within any business, those that are successful are normally that they look after their staff extremely well. We are a service-led industry. We are run by human beings, and we need to ensure that we understand that as principals, as partners, as business owners. We have to understand that. Okay. Training and development. So again, a partner can deliver most of the joint venture partnership models across the healthcare industry. They would have a training structure in place, academies, courses for all levels of staff, and including in dentistry as well. And I'll come to that in a short while. Governance supports, again, you can pick up a file of policies and try to understand the different policies that are required to operate a dental practice. To implement that will take you time and energy. If it's already out there, the systems are already out there, then a partner can certainly help with that. Accounts and legals, how to make money, how not to lose money, how to invest money, how to grow your assets, everything from the nuisance of paying, invoicing, verification of cashing out, etc. Our joint venture partner can support you with this. The next area is I've left it sort of more or less to the end, which is the marketing and PR. Marketing and PR, my belief is that if you want to grow a practice, you've got to invest 10% of your gross turnover to be able to grow that practice. And that's not just in Google pay-per-clicks and Facebook ads or Instagram ads. It's not just about that. That should only be a small percentage. A lot of it is to do with your user interface, your user journey, your website, which Shaz will talk about later on, videography, graphic designs, your social media campaigns, both organic and paid. PR activity, again, very undervalued, but it's the practice's local reputation that you want to try to build that trust within your practice. Again, I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a short while. All of these systems, all of these governance, HR, training, etc., should be encompassed within appropriate IT systems to then allow you to measure KPIs and the performance data of the practice to make strategic decisions moving forward. So again, I'll talk to you a lot about that as well. Clearly, in any partnership, there's a disadvantage, a perceived disadvantage. One could be that you don't have the control, just got to follow the processes and systems. Depending on the partner that you join with, will determine whether that input from yourself as frontline clinical staff is important or not. And for us, it's absolutely critical that we get that feedback from the frontline staff to be able to mold our services, for best patient outcomes. So it's not all doom and gloom in a partnership. Drew said earlier that don't do it alone. You can do it alone. You might take a bit longer. You might make more mistakes, but working within that. A model which is trial and tested, proven, which is also very matured. It also helps a lot. The one that I want to sometimes in a partnership, there's a perceived inequality of workload. So again, the iceberg analogy where the partner that's on the front line may feel that they're doing all the clinical work, but knowing what goes on behind the scenes is having that appreciation is key. There's so much more going on behind the scenes, and be open. If in a partnership, be open of what each partner will bring to the table, because it's a joint venture partnership and it's not a lopsided partnership. And then the list goes on. Etc. So I want to dive into, conscious of time, I want to dive into what we do as within the Synergy Dental Group as part of the joint venture partnerships, and sort of to introduce who we are, where we've come from, and what we've been doing for the last few years. The joint venture partnership model has been designed for over 15 years now within the Synergy Group, and we've been designing these the JVP model to make sure that every angle, HR, training, governance, IT, marketing, has been absolutely nailed down. Staff members have been recruited, trained, headhunted to support these systems, and then bespoke software solutions to manage the entirety the management structure. So that's the outcome of it is successful, well-oiled dental practices, and we've got a track record to prove that as well. So until that time, we've kept it under the radar. We do operate our own dental practices. We do operate a number of joint venture dental practices as well, and one which is led by dentists for dentists. So I'm a clinician 3 days a week, works in surgery to understand everything that we do as part of clinical dentistry, the challenges that we have as practice owners, and that gets all fed back into the management structure. So again, the last point on that is a healthy work-life balance. I strongly urge any partner or any associate not to work more than 35 to 40 hours a week maximum, but to maintain a healthy work-life balance, because life is more than just work. Okay? So a joint venture is where you've got an associate or an existing practice owner. We'll do everything else on the right-hand side, and you enjoy your clinical dentistry. It's either a joint venture partnership where the two partners, synergy, and an incoming partner or an existing practice owner owns shares within an operation company, an OpCo, or a joint venture management, which is where we don't own any equity, we just manage the whole practice, but with the exact same structures around it. So within the joint venture partnership, take the example of a squat practice. You have a 50% ownership by yourself as an incoming partner. Synergy will invest 50%, whatever that squat practice refurbishment costs would be, whether just leasehold or freehold. When you work in the actual practice, you'll earn your associate fee as a normal associate would. There's no central management cost. So unlike Specsavers, or unlike the Vets for Pets group, or unlike any other partnership models that exist that I know of, with us, there's no central management fees. So we do our bit centrally from our headquarters based in Greater Manchester. And as an associate, you would lead the team from on the ground level. So, and at the end of it, once your associate fees have been paid, etc., once the practice has been paid, the profits are shared by way of dividend. Okay. The joint venture management model is the same, except for the fact that we don't have any equity. Therefore, there will be a management fee for our entirety of the service that we provide. So in summary, you've got synergy that buy into an existing practice, vice versa. Synergy and a partner buy a new practice together, or synergy and a new partner start a squat practice together. And we're working with Andy and his team for the squat practice, the opportunities that exist there. Okay, equal ownership, equal shares. They're not sort of preferential shares. They're stock shares, equal shares, equal. It's a win-win, equal reward, equal risk. Associates get paid for the associate work, and it's a true equal partnership. The financial arrangements, again, I've sort of mentioned that, where you can stagger your financial arrangements 25% up to 50% to meet that 50% partnership. We would, if there is any, if we were to acquire a new practice, an existing practice, and you have to seek bank financing, we will be the parental guarantee as a synergy group to support your loan. We've done that, and we'll continue to support incoming partners on that as well. Obviously, all the running costs are met by the practice, and everything else is managed by us. Okay. What we found is that when we've run our existing practices, we've turned, we've really took over, implemented our systems and models, and the trial and tested systems that we've implemented have increased the turnover of each of our locations by between 2 to 8 times within a 3-year period. Okay, and the profitability when we take over a practice is normally an associate-led EBITDA from about £6,000 to £10,000 if it's associate led, but we've increased that to over 150 EBITDA on the actual profitability side of it. So there is great opportunity. There is a trial and tested model, and we'd like you guys to be part of it if anyone is interested. At the time that you want to relinquish your shares, you can sell your shares at any point. There's no tie-ins with us. If it's going to work, it's going to work. If it's not, it's not going to work. So we can either agree on a market value for you to sell your shares at any point you want, or we'll acquire your shares from you. Again, that's a mutual discussion, and something that everyone needs to know about from the outset. We've been very successful in procuring for new contracts, PDS, GDS, oral surgery contracts, and we'll continue to do so under the joint venture partnership model as well. Similar thing with the JVM model. All the services are provided centrally, and the actual growth potential for an existing practice owner. For example, as an existing practice owner, you believe in a potential, but there's a lot of energy that's required. We'll take over that and we'll ensure that your practice is a growth. You can sell at any point. There's no equity from us, so you can sell at any point, and you can achieve a higher goodwill value for that as well. So as an existing practice owner, in summary, you've got the JVM model where you own the full equity. Either we buy into your practice as a joint venture partner, so we get the practice value, we buy into the practice as a joint venture partner, or we buy the practice in full. For an associate dentist, Synergy and an associate buys a practice together, or set up a squat practice, or an associate invests into an existing practice. So there's some options for the audience there. Sort of talking into a bit more detail about the different services that make up the central management structure. It's important for everyone to know that above the iceberg, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and it's important that everyone understands what that sort of level of workload actually involves. So everything from governance to a dedicated HR team. We have a centralized call center, trained TCOs, clinical treatment coordinators, and we who take all our private inquiries, manage our books. We have receptionists on practice site as well, obviously. Or everything from the full 360 management functions we'll manage. Our team is mainly a clinically led team, and I'm just going to sort of blow that up a little bit more. To the left, we've got the operations team. We have tiers all the way up to the practice level. So everyone you see here is our operations team on the left, our trainers, our clinical trainers, our admin trainers, our accounts team. We then have the marketing team, head of digital marketing, head of social media marketing, head of graphics and videography, and the little minions that go with them. We've got the facilities and an IT team on to the right, to the bottom. Sort of just blowing that up a little bit more, where a full ops team from practice, facilities management to our head of our chief technical officer, with a team of software developers. We're constantly investing, constantly developing systems to help better manage a team. So can get this to play. There you go. So that's just to give you a quick overview of what the central facilities look like. Back to the presentation. There we are. So the way that we operate the services, the way that everything gets fed back up from practice level upwards, is that we have a monthly board meeting. The main leads, the main managers, operations, HR, governance, IT, are fed all the practice data so that strategic decisions can be made. We have a monthly head receptionist meeting, monthly head dentist meeting, a monthly partners meeting, monthly practice managers meeting, and a weekly marketing meeting to see abreast of new opportunities, etc. Communication and reporting is key to be able to make decisions from KPIs that are all measured. Again, this is quite OCD with this in terms of how do we capture the data for the purpose of sharing with partners in terms of performance, and then we can make joint decisions together for the betterment of the practice. We've developed a business management software from scratch. It's a bespoke software which encompasses everything from governance to HR to training to marketing, accounts, and it brings it all together quite neatly to be able to show any partner the snapshot version of the practice at that moment in time. It's all cloud-based, it's all real-time, and the data can be accessed from your fingertips. All the full appraisal for staff members is also captured. Every single task that every single member of the team was contracted to do gets captured within the software solution. It's quite a neat solution. The appraisal processes are then followed through. The appraisal processes, once they follow through, link in with the monthly performance, which then link into promotions or bonuses, etc. So it keeps team spirits high as objective data. You've got the management of all the governance, which is again through our central team, managed by our software solution. You've got a dedicated HR team, again, a massively undervalued area in any business. But you look after the people will look after the business. I think it's a motto that I've learned very earlier on. Everything from staff motivation events to appraisals to clear and specific job descriptions, we manage everything for you. Again, I alluded to the staff appraisals and how the SynPro software sort of manages the actual appraisal process for each member of staff. So they've got an actual view of the end of the month in where they're up to in terms of performance management, everyone's they know where they are, where they're up to. We do a lot of business management for everything from KPI dashboards to business planning to support for procurements or ongoing negotiations. We have great relationships with suppliers, and also if a practice wants to grow more, buy a second practice for a partner, buy a third practice, we will support you with that as well. Again, the transition between an associateship to an ownership, there's a period, or there's a lack of there's something missing in between. The mentorship is what Drew included in his presentation is key, and we provide that as part of as part of supports for our incoming partners as well. Accounts and legals, we take care of everything from invoice payments to cashing up verification, and these are the little nuances that as clinicians you want to focus your day delivering your clinical services, but you have full control over all the different elements because the data is there. You have the decision-making ability, but the actual nuances of it is all managed and controlled. Property services, whether that's for a new acquisition and an refurbishment or a brand new squad practice, we have teams that not only are locating new locations, but also the full facilities management, the full refurbishments, lease, the legal team to liaise, to deal with and manage the lease, or any freehold acquisitions, architects to design the practice the way that we both jointly want. So yes, so these are the nuances, the headache that we take from our partners. And I'm a firm believer in investing in your equipment, not just your staff, but your equipment too. And each one of our practices are fully digital, digital scanners, CT scans in a lot of our practices, electric micromotors from day one, which came very handy during the lockdown, in the lockdown currently, with less than 60,000 RPM, so that came very handy. But it's all the digital workflow that makes the whole practice environments extremely efficient. All encompassed by the IT systems. A lot of it is cloud-based, so managed, available, accessed by anyone, especially the partners from wherever they are. There's a big area that we work on, and I'm a strong believer in, is training and development of staff. Our training academy, the Sintrain Academy, fully accredited for levels of staff like your dental nurses, your receptionists, your practice managers, and especially your clinical staff, your therapists and your dentists as well. We have a full training structure on dental implantology, a certification course on restorative dentistry, and the list goes on. And this is especially useful for an associate dentist who wants to progress into practice ownership, but they've got two choices to make. Either they're going to academia or they're going to practice ownership, and one or the other will usually take precedence. And what we're doing here is we take all the nuances of practice ownership whilst you can continue to drive and develop your clinical dentistry as far as you want to take it. And we will support you on that as well. Again, sedation mentoring, the mentorship, not just the theoretical learning, but it's the mentorship. We have mentors across all our group, from implant mentorship to restorative, sedation mentors. And we sort of take, especially associate dentists, down the the clinical advancement routes at a pace that you'd like, but we've got the whole training package made available for you, from short-term orthodontics to restorative to implant dentistry to implant mentorship, implants, practical implant mentorship, and further. So it's a great place. It's a great way to advance your career while you're still a partner and a practice owner as well. The same for all our nurses and our DCPs, from radiography to implant nursing, sedation training, and it's a whole team effort. Okay. A lot of our courses are blended courses, so digital courses with live recorded material, all interacted, but then supported with mentorship, and some supported with lectures as well, a small group teaching. Again, I've left sort of the marketing side of it at the end, and I'm sure Shaz will pick this up more in a short while. Marketing, you've got to drive once everything else is covered, once your governance, IT, training, the whole practice has been developed, then you can switch the tap on, and then you can drive your footfall within your practice, whether it's an existing practice to work on your existing patient base, or whether there's a new squat location. But you got to make sure that everything else is done first before patients are driven into your practice. So, and we will do all of this for you. And there's no cost, so there's no fees involved for this. And I said that 10% of your marketing budget, 10% of your turnover should be on your marketing budgets, and majority of that is covered, okay, by our team. So not just the digital marketing, but also in terms of your local PR advertising as well. So everything from branding to the website journey to social media marketing, everything that we need, everything that you need in terms of a marketing campaign, we've got it covered, and we've shown the results at each of our locations that it all works. So yes, we also work with brand ambassadors as well, and I think Shaz again will pick this up in a short while as well. All the data for marketing, the KPIs, where to spend your money, when not to spend the money, is captured within our SynPro software. So partners are able to see where they're spending money, how many new patients have come through the door, what's the conversion rate, etc. And it's quite a neat software to pick that up. He then measures this against the finance KPIs, and decisions are made collectively. So once all of these systems come together in synergy, once all of these individual ingredients are placed in a recipe, you're gonna have success. Currently, the highest provider of Straumann implants in the Northwest, one of the highest provider of Invisaligns in the Greater Manchester and Lancashire area, good practice valuations, substantial growth. More importantly, great staff satisfaction, and that's shown by a very low staff turnover. So some of the examples: 800% growth over three years, 400% growth, and the results just speak for itself. Okay. I'm going to finish off with an introduction to the title, which is Associate to Practice Owner. And if you're an associate and you are thinking about practice ownership, we've got a model for the joint venture partnership. But if you think your time is not right now, what we've got is that you can work in one of our practices as an associate. You can settle in. You can work in the practice for a year or two, whatever you want. And when you are ready to invest in the practice, whatever gross turnover that you've achieved as an associate dentist will just cleanly knock it off the actual valuation of the practice, so that as an associate, whilst you're working, you're actually building in goodwill within the practice itself, and then you would acquire 50% of those shares. So it's a win-win solution. It's a joint risk, joint reward scenario. And just check us out, synergydentalpartnerships.com. There's a lot of opportunities currently available for the joint venture partnership. It might not be for you. It's not for everyone, and I'm more than happy to support or give you the little bit of wisdom that I have. If you are thinking about practice ownership on your own, go for it. But just get in touch, and I'll try to offer you some of the advice that I most certainly do all the time. So there's my details there as well. I think the question is, are you ready to join the revolution? Over to you, Shaz.
Thank you very much, Zuber, for a very, very nice detailed overview of the JVP model. It's not Specsavers, it's teeth savers for the public. And what's most important, and I think Jatinder Ruby asks, is a couple of questions I'll pop in as Shaz gets his presentation ready. Jatinder's question is, what KPIs do you monitor?
We monitor a number of KPIs, so it depends on what you're looking at. So you've got say, let's look at finance. We look at KPIs for budgeting. So we've got budgets that we set for everything from marketing to consumables, to lab fees, etc. We look at patient satisfaction levels for patient outcomes. There's a whole series of KPIs, and the dashboard that I shared with you earlier, sort of summarizes some of them. One of the key ones that we measure is staff appraisals. So that's a strong KPI because we're a service-led industry, and each member of staff, if they've got a job description and they're following that job description, it captures that in terms of from our software. So I'll just give you a scenario. So a dental nurse is tasked to do the sterilization checks on a daily basis. I know everyone, especially practice owners, know that it doesn't always happen. So what we've designed is that we've got the Simpro software where a dental nurse comes into practice. She logs into the Simpro using an iPad. She'll come onto the task, which the software will come up and say that your task today, right now, is to complete the sterilization checks. So she'll go to the autoclave, she'll check these sterilization checks. A slip will come out, or if you've got a digital one, a digital reading of your autoclave, the temperature will come and the pressure will come as well. The software will then ask you to take a picture of that as evidence. That will go into the software and that will mark it as with some clever artificial intelligence. It sort of marks it as a positive appraisal. We then got the levels of the head nurse and the regional head nurse that also look at and audit each individual task with the autonomy to reject that and give you a smart, sort of sad face, or maintain the happy face, which then, if you imagine that there's now 20 tasks for that head nurse, the dental nurse, to do on a daily basis, that feeds into the monthly score, and that KPI measures your performance. So if someone is performing below the threshold that's marked, normally it's a training issue, a training need. It could be motivation, and that's an HR issue that can be managed, but it's normally a training issue. And as such, we'll then enroll the staff member. If we see a pattern in where they are not performing well, we'll enroll the staff member onto SynTrain, which has every single module directed towards staff performance and their work, and they will put that as part of their personal development plan, and then they'll complete that, and the cycle goes on.
That's very, very good thinking, and I like that. There is a few other questions going. I will post them